Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is the monthly meeting of the Board of Elections at the Gaithersburg Board of Elections. It's Monday, April 16th, about 2:30. We have a quorum, but before we go into a meeting of the Board of Elections, we have to conduct the election of canvass officers. The Board of Canvassers was just sworn in by our Circuit Court Clerk, Barbara Mickeljohn.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to elect was it a chairperson and a secretary?
Chairperson and a secretary, yes, sir.
Okay. Are there nominations for...
I nominate Jim Shalek as the chair of the canvassers and Marianne Keefe, secretary.
Second.
Board of Canvassers.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? So do we have a motion to adjourn the Board of
I
Canvassers?
move we adjourn the Board of Canvassers.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now we're going to conduct our Board of Elections meeting. Again, it's a little after 2:30 on Monday, April 16th, 2018. We're at the Board of Elections in Gaithersburg, and we have a quorum and a number of guests today. So we are going to, well, first let's approve the minutes from February 26th and March 16th.
I move we accept the minutes of February 26th as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? And now we're going to
Mr.
approve...
President, could we approve the executive session minutes at this time?
Oh,
That would be for March 16th, correct?
Or February, March 19th.
March 19th. March 19th.
Okay.
so you want to do the minute of
We
March
also
16th?
have the March 16th regular minutes,
Yeah,
Right.
right?
regular
March
minutes.
19th.
March 19th.
Oh, the regular minutes?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking. I'm looking at the agenda that references.
It says March
Approval of
16th.
March 16th.
My
That's
apologies.
what I-
That is my error.
Oh, it just should be a 9?
Yes,
Oh,
my
okay.
error.
Yeah, it
Okay.
said March 19th.
Okay,
My
so now...
apologies, my error.
How about if we approve the minute and then we go to the executive session minute?
Okay, yeah, is there a motion to approve the minutes
Yes.
of March 19th, 2018?
I move we accept the minute of March 19 as amendment,
As most recently amended?
most recently. You want to read it?
No, that's fine.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? And then we have one executive session meeting? What's the date of that?
Is that February 26th?
I apologize. That was the March 19th meeting.
March 19th. That would have been sent to you in two separate emails, one from Margie and then one from me.
So we want to do the executive session on March 19th.
One of them we make
That
a
might
correction.
require us to remember whether we emailed anything back with anything.
Yes, the March 19th executive session minutes that
We're
I
not gonna-
prepared.
We're not going to want to circulate those in open session, so if we have to do that, then we have to do that in
In
executive.
executive
There were
committee.
no edits to Kevin's.
How about we wait for executive committee session when we are in the executive committee, then we can discuss it and
So
move it up.
we'll
Just
need
hold
that
on to
executive
it.
session
Yes.
for the minutes.
Just hold on to it. Thank you.
Okay, regarding the agenda, there's a topic that we're going to discuss in executive session regarding the security of our polling places on election day and early voting. We'll do that in executive session, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, public comments.
Before
Yeah.
we get to that, can I also make the suggestion that I think we have a number of people here who are interested in the first new business item. And I'm wondering if we can, like we have in the past for some other issues, move it up so that people can be here for that discussion?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But we're going to do the public comments first.
Yes.
And then we can move up the agenda item so that who's ever here can participate with us. Okay, public comments, Lisa?
So first we have Sydney Katz.
Okay. Sydney, welcome, Councilman. Do we have a chair for him? Or? No,
Just
sit.
Katz.
Sit there, okay.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm here obviously to discuss the polling place at 430 St. Elizabeth's, and I understand that this has been an ongoing conversation the last couple weeks, I guess. From what I understand, and Cheryl Kagan is the one who gave me the beginning of the heads up on this whole discussion. that I understand that it was the board's decision that it would be moved to, because of the during the primary, that St. Elizabeth's was not available for the vote, that to be able to hold the vote there during the primary, that it be moved to Richard Montgomery High School, which is about 2.5 miles or so from that spot. In the meantime, it's my understanding, I guess it's B'nai Israel, am I right? B'nai Israel had at first said no, and now they've said yes, that they could be a polling place, which is like a half a mile from there. And I know that we're running into difficulty that would be declared an emergency and how that would be fitting together. But if it's not possible, I mean, my first hope would be that you would reconsider and go to B'nai Israel for both the primary. But if that is not possible, and my second, way down on the second list, would be that you at least allow for the general election to come back to St. Elizabeth's. It's always been my opinion that the sooner you can come home, the better off you are. And this would allow for someone who is used to voting at St. Elizabeth's to vote at least during the general. As I say, to me, it would be better to have it B'nai Israel and then St. Elizabeth's. But that's why I'm here today, to ask for you to, I don't know whether the term reconsider or consider again, however that would work. Okay?
Yeah, no, thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person who would like to address the board is Beryl Feinberg.
Welcome, Beryl.
Thank you. I gave one of you a copy of my written testimony, so you will have it for your record.
Yep, Lisa has it, yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Beryl Feinberg, and I reside at 1200 Halesworth Drive in Rockville, Maryland. The 2018 elections are pivotal as Maryland voters exercise their right to choose the next governor, our next congressional representatives, state delegations, county executive, and county council members. Much is at stake, and here in Montgomery County, the impact of term limits translates into an enormous number of new candidates and veteran elected officials, all vying to push his or her message out to voters. The daily avalanche of campaign mailers and pomp cards is in full swing, all competing for voter attention. Elections officials, current elected officials, and candidates share a common goal to maximize voter participation. Despite the Herculean efforts to reduce barriers to voting, including ballots in Spanish, voter assistance for those with special needs, early voting, and no-fault absentee voting, voter turnout in Montgomery County remains abysmally low. Local political pundits and bloggers decry the loss of broad-based local journalism since the demise of the Gazette newspapers. While many barriers to voter turnout have been removed or minimized, we must not create new ones. As realtors say, it's all about location, location, location. Unfortunately, due to unique circumstances, the District 4-3 polling place located at St. Elizabeth School is available for the general election in November, but unavailable for the primary in June. Understanding that the BOE is up against multiple logistical deadlines, Richard Montgomery High School is the option put forth for the primary. However, simply stated, this creates new and a serious barrier for these voters. It is, according to distance on my phone, 3.7 miles from St. Elizabeth's campus, the current site, and out of the neighborhood to Richard Montgomery High School. However, nearby, it's a mere 0.76 miles from St. Elizabeth to another available site, the B'nai Israel congregation. Voters clearly want something that he or she can drive, walk, bicycle, or bus to without fighting Montgomery County's well-known traffic congestion, school buses, and unnecessary additional time out of busy days to vote. Perception of additional time as much a factor to thwart voter participation as is the actual inconvenience. So why add a barrier to voter participation with the suggested polling place for the primary? B'nai Israel Congregation on Montrose Road, located at 6301 Montrose Road, is a mere stone's throw and in the same neighborhood from the current St. Elizabeth site. This neighborhood's population encounters intra-county moves as well as new residents into the county who may not know the county's roads and traffic patterns, once again increasing the likelihood that voters will go to a new polling place out of the neighborhood. I urge the BOE to reconsider the site selection for the June primary from Richard Montgomery High School to this closer, easily accessible location with abundant parking. I have seen personally what happens when voters of all ages, those carpooling children to after-school activities, retired residents, and those new to the area when a polling place changes. For the Rockville municipal election in 2015, Ritchie Park Elementary School was no longer available for city District 7 voters, and in fact a location was selected that was outside the election district. Despite best communication efforts, many voters still drove to the old site and, frustrated with the new location, simply did not bother to travel to the new one. Let's not have a repeat of that for the June primary for District 430. Moving the place to B'nai Israel will make it simple, direct, and easy to vote on June 26. Then for the general election, let's return home, as County Council Member Sidney Katz has just said also. Let's return home to St. Elizabeth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Beryl.
Mr. Shalek, we don't have anyone else who wished to address the board at this time.
Well, Senator Kagan.
I'm sorry, it's not indicated on the
Okay.
sheet, so I'm not aware.
On the sign-up sheet?
No,
um,
she doesn't.
You got two people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we,
Delegate Gilchrist also.
Oh, okay.
wants to sign up.
That's fine.
it
Welcome.
it may be my error. I
that's-
told people they just had to sign in and then they'd be called
okay.
to speak. I'm sorry.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Gilchrist, delegate for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here also about the situation in precinct 430. And I would just urge that if you could reconsider that you do, certainly a place that's closer to the location that people are used to voting in will be easier for people to go to. I just heard Councilmember Feinberg say that when people show up at the old place, going to the new place is tough, and a place closer by would be certainly more convenient and probably is the best way to help the voters in 430. So thank you for having this meeting.
Does your recommendation is for just the primary or primary and general?
Primary in general.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Kagan, welcome again.
Again, I should get some flyer points for my number of visits here to the Board of
I
Elections.
remember the number.
Welcome, Mr. Banoff.
Thank you.
Congratulations. First off, I'm just back from Annapolis, and as you know, there was a lot of significant voter-related legislation that was enacted, so it'll be interesting and educational for all of us to see how that moves forward. I had some concerns about all of it, but hopefully that'll work well, and I'm happy for feedback if there are things that should be tweaked or reconsidered after we have our experience this year and beyond. I am here, and I hope you guys, I suspect you guys have all seen my emails over the last several months about this issue, and so I'm grateful to my colleagues for sharing their concerns as well, and I'm grateful for you all considering reopening this conversation. I listened to the audio of the State Board of Elections, and I know that this has been going on and round and round. I know that you guys have had a vote, but we more recently were able to reopen the possibility because B'nai Israel was willing to suddenly go from no, not available to yes. I talked to the rabbi directly, I talked to the president of the board and all that, and so they did vote. It is unfortunate that we got that data later than when you all had started your investigation back in November and December, but sometimes, you know, an extra ask changes the answer. There is no doubt in any of our minds, I think, that staying in the neighborhood, not forcing people to go on Rockville Pike, is vastly better. we're talking about, and Beryl and I had different numbers. According to Google Maps, it was half a mile from St. Elizabeth's to B'nai Israel versus 2.8 miles from St. Elizabeth to Richard Montgomery. And as Councilmember Feinberg indicated, it's not just the distance, which is significant, but it's also the hassle of the pike. And a lot of folks who live in that precinct are seniors, are elderly, do vote and avail themselves of a shuttle bus. And there will be fewer shuttle buses. They will take longer. It's going to be a challenge. And the bottom line is it will depress voter turnout. So I ran into, just last weekend, I ran into a constituent who said, how come they're moving my polling place? I can't believe it. And I said, send me an email. Oh my gosh. He said, it's going to be longer and I don't want to get on the pike and the shuttle buses. I was like, you're on my talking points. So I'm going to read you just a short excerpt from her short email. This is a very inconvenient location for the Montrose community, the Rollins Park Apartments, Congressional Towers, and several senior apartments. Driving on Rockville Pike in the morning, lunchtime, or the evening is difficult at best. The buses that transport senior citizens to the polls will take much longer and hence probably result in fewer trips. So that is an excerpt of from her email. I understand that you guys have already sent out 2 mailings, one that was in error and one that was fixing it. Average normal voters are not yet figuring out where they vote. It is more than 2 months until Election Day. And I realize that it's extra work on our hardworking staff. I realize that there's an extra expense to do another mailing. But I also believe that it is a no-brainer that we should stay in that community in order to provide convenience. Because fundamentally, it's not about staff time or bureaucratic inconvenience. It really is about maximizing voter turnout. So I implore you to please shift to B'nai Israel for the primary, and then as Councilmember Katz said, come home to St. Elizabeth's, where it should be, where most people are used to voting for the general election. I have spoken to the State Board of Elections, and the definition of emergency is not in the code, it's not in the regulations. Obviously, if something burned down, that's an obvious emergency. But we do have something that is compelling. We have a confusing situation in the making with senior citizens and people for whom English is not their primary language coming up to a new venue with color-coded locations and go to room 2, not room 3, or go this side of the cafeteria, not that cafeteria, with different, and there may or may not, if these are all District 17 folks, there would not be the same ballot styles, but in order to make sure that the precinct data can be aggregated and counted appropriately, I just think we're asking for headaches there. I have talked to folks there. They don't have to wait until their May meeting. They can have a phone meeting, publicize it appropriately so it complies with the open meeting law. And I had hoped that they could have just, at their meeting last week, just kind of given the blank check. Whatever you guys decide today, they pre-approve you. They were not able to do that because of the 48-hour publicity, public meetings laws. But they can do this. They can do it quickly, and I encourage you to do that. In closing, this is my very favorite button, and I brought it out today. It says, vote or you have nobody to blame but yourself. And I would suggest that we don't want the person to blame being our Board of Elections because it was too hard for them to vote. So please make it easy for these Rockville residents who want to participate in June and November. Please make it easy for them to stay in their community and cast a ballot in this very important election year.
Senator, just 2 quick questions. One, why would you say that the general election would be at St. Elizabeth? Would it be preferable to keep the primary and the general at B'nai Israel?
I would defer to you, Mr. Shalik, and that's fine. I would think that changing it once for the primary would make more sense and then go back to St. Elizabeth's where they're kind of used to going most of the time. But if in your wisdom you choose to have it at B'nai for both the primary and the general and then return it to St. Elizabeth's for 2020,
I think it's more than, in our wisdom, there are regulations on that.
I know that it's, right, so.
That you're supposed to have the primary and the general in the same location.
And there is a loophole for extreme situations. So in June, St. Elizabeth simply isn't available, but they are available and willing in November. So either we make the case that we should do 2 different locations, whether that's Benet and then St. Elizabeth, or Benet for both. I think either of those is vastly preferable to asking people to go to Richard Montgomery and the challenges that entails.
Available in November.
I believe that it is. They indicated, I mean, there was we're not sure we can do this, and then the board met and they did
Well, I know
vote.
the primary, I just wondered if
Well,
they
they
had
were,
been asked.
they were on the list for 418 when we were considering that.
I apologize. Was the question if the Benet Israel was available for June and November?
Correct.
That is correct. They are willing to host both elections.
Thank you.
And then I'll turn it over. How confident are you that the state would do it quickly? Do you have any issue?
I spoke to Jared DeMarinis this morning. I didn't ask for a time of the conference call, but he said that it was doable under the open meetings law, that they've done it before. Because I said I wouldn't want to have an emergency convening of the board. That seems unreasonable for one precinct. But they said they can do it and have a publicized thing, have a speakerphone on, and as well, and have people dial in. So it's a precinct. It's not even that big a precinct, but it is. I think we want to encourage all our voters to participate and make it as simple as we can.
Nahid, and then.
I have a question. In your tweet, you said if there are available polling places, why might you force senior voters to go somewhere?
Yes.
The way you wrote it down is that we did it purposely. You didn't say we wanted to go.
Sure.
They didn't want us.
Right.
Maybe Chris can stand up and tell us that. We tried.
Right.
Until you got involved. Of course now, but not before.
Right. So,
tweet is something. Okay, go ahead.
So our president tweets a lot, and sometimes
yes.
they
we
are.
didn't say we approve it or disapprove it, but this is we are involved.
Yes.
The way if somebody reads it and say, "Oh, these people are against senior citizen," I am a senior citizen. So many people are senior citizens, even though I'm 18 years old. But
I certainly meant no offense, but I am concerned about the current status as it is based on the vote of this board. It would force seniors to go to Richard Montgomery, and I think that's not ideal. And especially now that we do have another option, which I understand was not an option that was available before, but since it is, I think it would be really unfortunate if we chose not to take advantage of that.
Marianne?
So if there was any offense, Nahid, it was not intended.
no, I'm saying that if somebody read it, that's how you get it. That, oh, these people, they didn't know that we tried.
Sure.
You couldn't have them.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we were happy about
Right.
this, you know.
No,
we
not
hated
happy.
it.
Right.
You know?
I
The synagogue told us no. I wish they had
Right.
been on board.
Right.
Right.
You know, we
Right.
want to do the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Marianne?
I have a couple of things that
Sure.
I'd like to address on this. First of all, how many, I'm going to put you on the spot here probably, Margaret and staff. How many precincts have we had to move for this election?
Oh, I think it's 30.
It's over 30, isn't it?
We originally started, when we finalized our list, it was 23 moves. But now with the situation with Tilden, 418 moving over to the middle school, it's 24 moves.
24. Okay. I know some of them we were able to work out with the Board of Ed, a few of them, but not most of them. So the issues you're raising, and, you know, I know Precinct 430 well. It's close to where I live. I go there every election day. It's one of the ones I check on. Exists in all these others where, it troubled us no end that we had to make those moves. And we went the extra mile. You can talk to all of us and Mike Subin, setting up meetings with the superintendent to do whatever we could to not have to do it. 430 is one of 24 precincts that, has this issue. And we feel concerned and badly about all of them. And I agree with you. It does hurt voter turnout because people get confused or they get mad or whatever. And although we have other alternatives for them with voting by mail and early voting, it sometimes doesn't carry over that way. The other thing is, and I was on the losing end, if you will, of the initial vote on this, where it was 3-2. I was one of the two that wasn't in favor of Richard Montgomery on first blush, and wanted to see still if we could. And I can tell you, staff did work mightily on this, really did a great job reaching out. David and others suggested all kinds of additional places to call and see, could we possibly, and especially wanting to keep it in the precinct. And none of it materialized. And then the next thing that happened was, I believe, your email. And the sad thing about your email is that there was like a 10 or 12 day lag between when you heard from the synagogue and when you reached out here that put us up against that deadline. If we had known when you originally knew that, hey, yeah, they're willing to talk now and this could happen, it preceded our March meeting and we could have dealt with it in a timely, legal fashion. All of that coming into this, we then had an emergency meeting last week where we were looking at another precinct, 418, and realized that in fact the synagogue was so behind being able to do this, they were willing to do it for 418. And so the notion then came up, well, maybe we should look into the 430. But as you can see, it's getting more and more complicated and more time is going on. And I'm really concerned with why are we keeping this alive at this point when, what are we saying to the other 23 precincts out there that we just, said this is what happened, this is what we got to do, this is the best place we can find for you, where we had many places turn us down for moving some of those precincts. So I'm a little troubled by it.
So first off, let me speak to my delay. I thought I had forwarded it more quickly than that, but obviously in the middle of the 90-day session, things that don't seem urgent can fall off the radar screen and then get picked up again. So to the degree that I didn't forward the information I had more quickly, I regret that, but you got to cut me a little slack in the middle of the session. The bottom line is I did notify you before the deadline. And there was a several-day delay, as I guess you guys communicated internally before I was told that it was after the deadline. It was actually on the deadline that I got a response from Ms. Jurgensen, and then I got the state involved when I was told that there would be exceptions that could be made. So it sounds like if there were 23 precincts, if you've gotten 22 of them worked out in a way that makes sense, that's local, there's really only a one precinct problem now. And as you can see, the state, county, and municipality are all concerned about it because we know that precinct well, and we know that there's going to be a huge voter turnout drop-off if it is shifted to Richard Montgomery. It really is a problem.
Margaret?
I just kind of want to review. First of all, in the process of preparing for the 2018 election, the board agreed to a calendar in which we would select early voting sites and then the polling places. You came to a vote on polling places in November. We notified you that St. Elizabeth's refused to sign the lease because of a children's camp and that we would have to come up with a different location. So we brought to the board the possibilities. In the January board meeting, the board sent us back out to go look for some other locations. In the meantime, I'm receiving information from the state board that January 26th was the deadline for me to provide all the polling places, precinct and consolidation changes. And then again on February 2nd, I get the same message. And the board did make the decision in late February. In the meantime, we started creating ballots approximately March 3rd, and those are the proofs of at least the optical scan. The system in which the ballot is created is a statewide system. And it's not just a matter of let's tweak this one thing. It's a matter of putting together a calendar, making sure that we hit certain marks or deadlines so that the state can get its deliverables out to the various vendors. So obviously the election day ballot, these ballots here have already gone to the printer to start laying out. Test decks, which we need to begin to prepare the voting, the DS200s that are used in early voting. Those were being prepared on April 12. The ballot duplication, which isn't us, it's Baltimore County. But all of these different deadlines are set so that we can make sure that we have ballots on a timely basis. May 3rd, the staff will be attending training on how the ballot delivery system with the mail ballot with ES and S is going to go so that we can track the ballot in the mail system as well as prepare the ballots that are starting to go to the nursing homes. The problem isn't just moving this one location, it affects the entire system. So while I appreciate the fact that the senator wants us to move to Benet, and we would have liked to have moved to Benet, the problem is it's come too late. It would back up the entire process. Now, you know, obviously the board is going to make the recommendations that they want, but when we first received Senator Kagan's email and I answered it, no one came to me or Jim to say that this was an emergency, which would have given me some sort of notion that we should move on this. All I heard was that, you know, Senator Kagan wanted us to move to Benet. When we did our second mailing, the correct mailing, notifying people that they were going to Richard Montgomery, we got 3 phone calls. And all of them just wanted to know why we were being moved from St. Elizabeth. And we explained to them that there was a children's camp and that there was a conflict, and they wanted to know if we were going to go back, and we said we certainly would try in 2020. That Jessica and her staff in the Voter Services Division said that the board generally has polling places in the same location for the full election cycle. But that's all we heard from. So while I appreciate the desire to have voter turnout, and the other thing is this board directed staff to send out a separate mailing in May that you've all seen the artwork on, let's take a peek at your new polling place, which we're not required to do, but we are going to be sending to the individuals that are registered to vote in all of the precincts that were required to move, to say, you know, sorry, we had to move out of your polling place because the school is under construction or there's a children's camp or whatever the reason is, and we have a picture of the polling place as well as the address and also how to go to an early voting center and or apply for a ballot by mail. So we are trying to mitigate for the exact problems. I certainly have no problems if the board wishes to go back to the state board and request to change it. There's no problem with that. But I also need to let you know that there are deadlines that have to be met. Nursing home teams are being, in fact, some of them came in today to get oriented. The election is coming, and we have to move forward. We've been going over this since the end of March, and we're 2 weeks away from having ballots, and this is really late in the process.
Margaret, how does,
And in here, you have a copy of the state's timeline. This is the state's timeline.
Margaret, how does changing one precinct affect all of them?
There is an explanation from the state. Natasha White, who's their person, sent the explanation, and I did forward it out to the board members.
Natasha Walker?
Natasha Walker, yes.
It still didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, except that one thing that I noted from that explanation was that a good portion of the reason for the issue is because we have a consolidated precinct at Richard Montgomery.
That's true.
And she seems to be saying that they would have to change the ballot style because we were moving out of a consolidated precinct into an individual precinct. And that's part of what I don't quite understand. If they've already set it up for a separate ballot style, and maybe that's not what they normally do, why does it have to be changed in order to move it to another location? It's already a different. It's already different than the other one. I frankly don't know that. I do want to say this. I may not have used the word emergency, but I think my position was made very clear to everyone before, during, and after. When Richard Montgomery was first proposed, I said that I thought it was too far away. I showed you the map of the precinct, which is across Montrose Road from where I live. I showed you where the people live in that precinct, and I made some of the same arguments, although not as well, that Senator Kagan and Councilmember Katz and Councilmember Feinberg and Delegate Gilchrist have all been making. But I also did not receive Senator Kagan's message that went to Jim and Mary Ann, which is, while it's all well and good to say, well, it's March the 23rd, we only have till March the 27th, it's too late. And I definitely agree. If we got it March the 1st, or whenever it was that Benet, that would have, we wouldn't be here right now. But if I had the opportunity then, I would have described it as an emergency. I would have said that we should, work all weekend or, meet on Sunday, whatever it took in order to do it. I don't really think that there should be a lot of confusion as to how we feel about it. And then finally, I will just say that we obviously viewed it as a very important subject. We discussed this at some length during our phone/meeting last Wednesday. And we were very clear, and we had a vote that was 4-0. And Margaret, you went to the state board and you never once mentioned that we had a 4-0 vote that said that we wanted this to be discussed. You mentioned lots of problems with this. You mentioned lots of things that you thought was a reason not to do this. But we had 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats agreeing on our board that we wanted this to be discussed and considered. The case you made was the case against it. Now, you didn't quite say I'm against it. You just made all the different reasons why it could potentially be problematic. Well, the thing that the case for it is that, as Jim has said to me multiple times, there is no question that this is a better precinct. There's no question that this is convenient for the voters and Richard Montgomery is not. So I think that it's up to the board then to decide kind of there is a balance here between, how big a deal is it? And I totally agree with Mary Ann that, yeah, there's a lot of places where we would like to do this. We only get to address one at a time.
We do them one at a time.
And not all of them are quite as stark as this one. This one is really stark. This one is the difference between half a mile and 2.5 miles. The difference between being able to walk there in a community where a lot of people walk places, there's a lot of Orthodox folks who live in that community who, they walk every Saturday.
There are a lot of seniors too.
A lot of seniors in that location as well. And Senator Kagan referred, and others referred to the traffic on Rockville Pike. It's also the traffic on 270. There's basically two ways to get from that neighborhood to Richard Montgomery. One involves Rockville Pike and the other involves 270. Both of them are, depending on the time of day, traffic nightmares. So,
We do have maps.
Well,
Yeah.
it's scary for seniors.
yeah. So anyway, I'm surprised at the idea that anyone thinks that there was a question as to, how important this was. I mean, I think Mary Ann and I argued at the February meeting that, we should spend another month looking. It was a perfectly rational decision either way as to whether, because we didn't have any particularly hot leads at that moment. But I don't think there was any question that, that people thought this was a big deal.
I have some questions.
Al?
Question about the ballots, and I didn't quite understand the email either. I just have to pour over more carefully. But 430 is 430. It's always in the same district, same election district, legislative, councilmanic, and so on. What about changing the polling place changes the ballot? And then also, if it does change the ballot, just to do a bit of software changes with your fingers for a little while and it's done, as opposed to people worrying about getting to vote at a different place. And then on the timing, it was just April the 5th that Kevin sent out his letter about 418. You just found out about the 418 with the Tilton Center not being available. And so we've had other occasions where at the last minute we had an emergency situation where you had to find another precinct that worked, another polling place that worked. And I mean, I can't vote, but I'd be in favor of going to B'nai Israel, and my preference would be both primary and general, because I'm in general favor of having the same polling place for both.
Thanks, Al.
I have a question. The state representatives seem to think there was a difference between the situation with Tilden Center moving to Tilden Middle School and the situation with this precinct at Richard Montgomery. In both cases, we have two different precincts in one building. Is there a difference as far as putting the ballots together between those two situations?
They are not the same. They are in separate rooms. It's a whole separate. Precinct 4-5 is set up in the gym, and the other precinct 418 is set up in the gym, and the other precinct is set up in the cafeteria.
They are kept as two separate ballots. 418 is not part of 410. They're two separate rooms.
Okay, now is 410 the one that usually votes at Tilden Middle School?
Yes, they're two separate rooms. They're not consolidated.
Now, what about at Richard Montgomery?
They're in the same room.
They're in the same room.
And they're consolidated.
And that's the difference between needing to redo the ballots or not needing to redo the ballots, is because of different rooms versus the same room?
Because of the way the system works, is the election definition, the way we have to define it, the way the state defines it. If they have to break it apart, it's a lot of work, and we have to redo every single ballot, not just one, every single one we got to look at again.
Janet, could I ask another question?
Mm-hmm.
Will precinct 430 data results?
Yes, that's why they're consolidated, but they have two separate ballots, styles in the same room. In order to separate it, she still has to give 430 its own ballot style to move it out. Now, if we had to remove the entire Richard Montgomery, that'd be no problem. Because they're consolidated, we can move the whole precinct. But to separate them, it's an issue.
So the 430 ballot is a different ballot style than the other precinct at Richard Montgomery?
Right. 405 and 430 have different ballot styles, but in the election definition, it's a consolidated, and the software works different.
Between argument to move it to a separate location.
You have to program the scanners to accept both ballots in the consolidated.
So there's only going to be one scanner at Richard Montgomery?
It's going to be 4 scanners at Richard Montgomery.
But it's the one scanner that
one reads all of it.
John, you said you have to change every single ballot style?
We would have to look at them. We don't have to change them, but if they make a change, we have to prove every single one to make sure they did not mess up the ballots.
The fax ballots or the internet
If they
ballots.
change one thing, we got to go through every single ballot again.
which is 70-something ballot stops.
Right.
And they want it tomorrow. We can't do that.
If we had a ballot for every precinct, we would have to have a Republican, a Democrat, and an unaffiliated times every precinct.
Right, I
So we'd
understand.
have
I understand.
700
You have 700 ballots. But
So
you
instead,
don't.
we program one scanner to take one ballot. Unless you consolidate, you program one scanner to take two.
So at Tilden Middle School, you're planning to have different scanners for different precincts.
Right. And they're in
And
separate
at Richard
rows.
Montgomery, you're planning to have the same scanners for different precincts.
Correct.
And that's the reason for this
Right.
this whole thing.
Yes.
So how was the decision made to have the same scanner for different precincts, and why are we doing it that way? Why
We
aren't
do
we?
it for all the consolidated precincts.
Except for
Like
Tilden
seven-
Middle School,
It's
apparently.
on the two ballots.
Because we didn't want to change the ballot stop for Tilden and go back and have to do it. That's why we decided to keep them separate.
Additionally,
so we didn't
the
have to go
other
back
reason which was discussed at the meeting was the fact, and Mary Ann brought it up, is that if you have people line up in separate rooms, then they stand in line, they're in the wrong line, and they're just as they may walk over to the other precinct and stand in line again, they also have an opportunity to walk out the door in frustration. So we have one set of poll books. Everybody goes in, they check in the poll books, and then they are given their respective ballots. That minimizes voters walking away. We believe that gives the voter, it respects their time.
Margaret, notwithstanding what Janet said, if we move it to B'nai Israel, can it be done?
I would have to ask the state.
No, I mean, is it doable?
We'd have to redo all the
Of course, it's doable.
We have to redo
Okay.
all the
I mean, it's
ballots.
doable, but yeah,
Okay.
I guess you're talking.
Possible, but it takes time and
Quite
manpower.
honestly, this is really not a question I can answer, because I'm not sure that the state would allow for Montgomery County to delay the production of the ballots for the rest of the
Well, that's not up
state.
to us. That's up to the state. You know.
The only thing I wanted to say, when you mentioned my name in terms of the going into one facility, I had originally said, well, if we go to Richard Montgomery, can we not have, one precinct in the cafeteria, one in the gym or whatnot? And that's when it was, I guess because of the size of it and the locations of the places that they use, it's so vast and people moving around or whatever, that it was determined at that time that could not be done, and which I guess is what's resulted now in this.
But no one suggested at that time about the need to redo the ballots being one of the factors for that. That was just about the convenience of the voters.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
There wasn't discussion about the ballots, but
Right.
there was discussion about how you control
Right.
the crowds and the
Right.
people and how they
Right.
get to where they had to go and not get mad and run away.
Right. My own view is that a lot of that can be handled by additional volunteers, and that I have.
Good luck with that.
Well, I have a high degree of confidence in the Future Vote program.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's public comment, I think we should make final comments and then vote on this.
You need a motion? I'll be glad
Well,
to
no,
make
let's.
one.
I'd like to hear from on the 4:30.
State, we have to.
No, I'm just saying, but
state
we're going to vote on what we recommend to the state. Jackie, what are your thoughts, if you have any?
I
on
think the senator and the others make a very good case for keeping it there, because
Go on.
we're getting people mainly to put it at the synagogue. The primary only would be my suggestion if we do that. I think they make a very good case for it. I would like to know a little bit more, with a little bit more clarity, the real upshot of the staff, what the staff has to do, how much actual change there is if they do that. And I'm not sure I'm clear on what Margaret said was going to happen, but I tend to think having the primary at the synagogue isn't a bad idea.
Alex? I'll go around.
Excuse me, and I'd also like
sorry.
some thoughts on how much mailing needs to be done. I think that's important, and how much the cost is.
Well, I don't know. This puts us in a pretty impossible position. I mean, a compelling case has been made, but it's almost like it doesn't matter what the burden on the staff is. We got to do it, and sometimes I think we don't pay enough attention to that kind of a burden. And I don't want this to be used as a precedent in the future when somebody else comes with a problem, saying, well, we waited this long to change it, why can't we do it again? I'm not saying that's a reason not to do it this time, but, we all have deadlines. We've got to respond to those, If I don't file a brief on time, the judge doesn't give me a redo. He says you're out. So I'm just saying this puts us in a very difficult position, and a compelling case, I think, has been made. But it's not easy, and it does kind of disrupt the process quite a bit. So I do think that points have been made by people before that having different polling places for the primary and the general creates more confusion, not less. So if we're going to do this, I guess I would think we should make the change for both elections.
Naheed?
The same is too much. I don't know. I really don't know. I wouldn't want to go back there, but it's changing all of these, and states, we don't know what they're going to do. It's very tough situation.
Oh, I know it's tough.
Jim, may I ask a question? The state will do whatever we decide today. Am I correct on that?
No.
They don't have to.
No.
No, the state's going
You go to those meetings
what
with
will have
me.
to happen
Well, that's
is that if you all decide you're going to do this, then I would suggest that I begin dictating a letter that would get emailed out this afternoon requesting that they forget 48 hours notice for them to go ahead and have a meeting as soon as possible, if that's what the board decides to do. But unfortunately, the law that was passed last year that required this 48-hour notice period was the holdup, I think, for the state really to do anything with this when we wanted them to act on it, late last week. So sort of the victim of unintended consequences was this 48-hour advance notice precluded the state from going ahead and taking any action on it.
Yeah, my view is I agree with the senator and the delegate. Thanks for coming, and the councilman. Our priority should be the voters, and yes, the staff will pick up a burden, but we're here to serve the voters. And there's no question in my mind. I've been by that the B'nai Israel is 100 times better than Richard Montgomery, and we're here to serve the people. So we have to roll up our sleeves and do extra work. That's why we're here. So my view is that we should move to B'nai Israel for the primary and the general, because it's better for the voters. I mean, that's my headline. This is better for the voters. And the state doesn't go along, it's on them for not serving the voters like we are. But I agree with the senator and the delegate that we owe it to the voters to make it easy to vote. Mary?
I pretty much have said what I think about it. I mean, I agree with everything that everybody else has said about it, too. Obviously, my concern is about the voters, but my concern is about the voters all over Montgomery County. And I'm really concerned that of the equity of this in terms of all these other precincts that we've moved and, that aren't going to be happy with where they're moving, and we're going to lose some voters along the way there too. So, I mean, and I think one of the things Margaret talked about, and we all had been very strong about getting this new notice out that's going to go in May that will really define for the people that are being moved, exactly what the wherewithal is, not just the little card that they got in that first kind of mailing. So we've been cognizant of this all along and tried to do the best that we could. And, I've worked in a world where timelines meant something, dates meant something. And I'm not a lawyer, but I've been thrown out of many an issue, too, for missing a deadline on things. It comes up in labor agreements a lot. I still have concern with this, but I'm certainly. What I think is that if we are in agreement that we would like to make this move to the synagogue, that we get something right away this afternoon out to the state board, stating the wish of our board, and try to get a reply back as quickly as possible that we can move on with this.
Do we have to be available for the board meeting, state board meeting?
No.
It's just literally a state board meeting by phone.
It's no different than the board meeting that you all had last week, which is you can attend by telephone or you can attend in Annapolis.
Do we have a problem with the UOCAVA on this at all, or does that not?
Ballots, the first ballot, absentee ballot poll is May 3rd. It'll take us 10 days.
May 3rd.
To do 462 to prove 462 ballots. And that in 10 days is if, we work tremendous amount of work and overtime. And
I'm sorry.
I can't guarantee, if we're going to have, it's going to impact early voting.
Well,
I'm not sure how.
I back up what Mary Ann says. To minimize confusion, that's why I said we should have it at the primary and the general at the same location. David?
I don't know if you're ready for a motion, but I'd be happy to make one if you want. But my own view is that I agree with you that our first choice should be to have the polling place in the same place for the primary and the general, which would be B'nai Israel. I realize it's not what our elected officials came in saying, but I do think it's less confusing to people to have it in the same place. I know this what not only you said, Jim, it's also what Alex said. I think that the state law says that it's up to the local board to determine what is an emergency, and it says it very explicitly. And as we know from our council, there is no case law. There's no regulatory language. I mean, basically, it's on us to decide what that is. I think this qualifies. I think it's definitely the best thing for the voters. I do think we have to have a backup plan if the state were to decide that they're not willing to change the primary, but they are willing to change the general election. And I think that if they're not willing to change the primary and they are willing to change the general election, I would still want to change the general election because I want to make it as convenient for the voters for the general election.
Well, we don't have to do that now, though. We can do that after the primary. We can do that.
But if we're going to send, we don't want to have another 48-hour situation here.
Yeah, but do we want to give them an out?
I don't want to give them an out. No.
But why would they approve it for the general but not the primary?
Because of all the ballot things that Margaret just mentioned.
Doesn't that give them an out, though, David?
That's a good call.
Yes. Okay. I don't have to. I don't need to do it now. I'm just saying that. Well, let me say it a different way. If we are unsuccessful in getting it for the primary and the general, I personally plan to be back to talk about the general.
I agree.
And I'm sure others feel similarly. But
Mr. President, I did ask that question. I did ask the state that question. If you could change, if it stayed at Richard Montgomery, could the board come back and ask for a change for the general election? And the answer was yes.
Alan, I'm sorry, David.
No, I'm good.
I volunteer to help the staff anyway. I'm semi-retired. If you want some extra eyes to prove things,
he's really good.
He's really good.
Alan, I think that's a wonderful suggestion, and I was going to suggest if Margaret needs proofing help, that certainly some of us on the board could offer our time doing that.
All right. Well, let's put a motion on the table, David.
I move that we recommend to the state board that because of the emergency involving precinct 430, that we would like to put to relocate the polling place from Richard Montgomery High School to B'nai Israel congregation for both the primary and the general election of 2018.
Is there a second?
I would love it if you would just say the primary and let's do the general later.
Yeah.
Doesn't that add to confusion? Primary in one location.
I thought that I heard a majority of the board, including myself, who were in favor of the same location for the primary and the general.
David, you've been pretty consistent in the past about feelings on that.
Yes, I have.
I don't detect any retreat from that position.
No.
But
despite my friends here who were saying something different, I appreciate your acknowledging that, Alex.
Isn't that in the law or the regulations that you should keep this primary and the general at the same place?
No.
What? I thought it was.
I thought-
Okay.
Isn't it? It is.
So-
Unless there's an emergency.
Yes,
Apparently.
So let me suggest that my motion is for the same place for the primary and the general. Jackie, if I lose you on this, I'm very sorry to lose you. I hope that you'll still support it, although I realize that your vote may not count if these three people are all voting. But my motion is to have it, both of them at B'nai Israel.
How about the state come back and say that we won't? Then mix them together. If you do separately, you have a better
I think we can
chance.
cross that bridge when we come to it, because if it's not about the
We don't
primary,
have that much time.
no, but for the general we do.
The
For
state's
pri-
not going to come back and say, put them in different places.
No.
The state wants them in the same place. I attend enough state board meetings, you and I have attended many, and Jackie and I, and they're constantly having to deal with requests of people that want to mix them in different places, because the norm and what is expected is that the primary and the general be in the same location.
Is there a second to David's motion?
I second it.
Marion seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of David's motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Unanimous.
5-0.
By
5-0.
the way, they don't.
Just so it's clear, though, if the state board decides not to meet this week,
We have to decide what to do after that.
Well, I'm going to call Cheryl.
I'll call Jared on my way out of here.
Well,
Or I should.
you can call the chair of the state
Yeah,
board.
yeah, I was gonna say, I will.
Call the
Yeah,
chair of the
he-
state
he's-
board.
he's gonna need to hear from you anyway.
They
Yes.
can go Tower Oak, Wooten Park, voila, they're there. They don't have to go Rockville Pike. I mean, I don't live there, but I'm saying that. In case.
Well, let's get it done. It's good for the voters. Let's try and get it done.
Thank you all. I appreciate your
Thank you all.
in this.
Retweet again.
Thank you.
Make sure to mention Nahid's name
I will say that.
when you tweet
I just said
in
that
a positive way.
In a positive way.
Jim.
Thank
Jim,
you all.
May we take a 5-minute break? So Margaret wants to call, actually, make the request.
Great. Thanks. So we'll take a 5-minute break off the record. Okay, we're back on the record at our Board of Elections meeting. It's 20-4. I forgot to say two things before we started the meeting, both good. First, I got a call from Susan Heltemus, who's a Democratic activist, very active in the Democratic Party, and she had a meeting with her Democratic club in Silver Spring. And
Wait. You didn't walk out with a cell phone, with an extra cell phone, did you? I think somebody did.
Oh. But I forgot my lunch.
Important.
Really important. Yes, and it's very
So Susan,
welcome to my life.
so Susan Helton has called, and Alisoon and Gilberto gave a presentation to the Democratic Club in Silver Spring, and she told me that they both did an excellent job, very professional, and very well received, and basically restated the affection she has for Margaret and the staff, and kudos to Alisoon and Gilberto for an excellent job. Second, an old friend of mine, John Herson, the former majority leader of the state legislature, we were panelists on a TV show for like 20 years. On TV this past weekend, there was a topic on the TV show called 21 This Week about election security and the concerns the public may have. And he publicly stated what a good job our board does, the staff, the Board of Elections, and he gave kudos to the Board of Elections for the good work they do, and basically telling the public not to worry about security.
Did they have anybody on that?
No.
They didn't have any.
No, it's just a topic.
To it.
No, it's just a topic.
Yeah, sometimes they actually bring somebody that
But
knows
they
about
basically,
it.
he basically said that the Board of Elections does a good job, and it came up in the topic of protecting the voters' security and information, etc. So, thank you, John Herson, and I like to hear those things. Okay, so we are now. Do we have any more public comments? We kind of. Yes.
I will just say that I was in attendance as well at the Democratic 18 breakfast, and they did do a fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There were some candidates there too, I'm told. Good. Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Candidates are everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so now we go to the election director. Margaret reports.
Okay. Personnel, we have added 46 temporary staff. Full employment in Montgomery County, Maryland has definitely presented a challenge in being able to fill these positions, but I want to congratulate Leslie and Jessica and Chris for continuing to do their best to try to find individuals that are qualified and have the attention to detail. And hopefully we'll get all of these positions filled. And so that's about it with that. Election director's budget. Margie, that's you.
So just want to first off, so I don't forget this month, remind everybody that the Government Operations Committee will be reviewing the county executive's recommended budget for the FY19 fiscal year. That meeting is still scheduled for Wednesday, April 18th at 9:30. We're in the 7th floor hearing room. As of Friday afternoon, which is the latest update to the schedule, we are still number 2 on the agenda. So I just want to let everybody know
It's this Wednesday.
April 18th, yes.
At 9:30.
Yes.
7th floor.
Yes.
Mr. President, I'm not able to attend that meeting. So.
Nor am I, but I did reach out to the members of to the staff of the committee.
Oh, good.
In behalf of the outreach budget that we all work very hard to
I may not be able to.
Okay.
Alan, are you able to be there?
I could be there.
Okay.
I'll be there. Okay.
Okay. And then the budget for the current fiscal year was sent to you in advance. We are 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year. We still have 59% of our budget left. But as I promised last month, it's going quickly. Just a couple of things to point out that show that we are in full election mode. If you look at the seasonal temps line, 50020, in 1 month we went from 68,000 to 118,000. In our overtime line, 50324, in 1 month we went from 4,900 to 22,000.
Margie, may I ask about the temporary office clerical move from OP for clarity, please?
Move from OP for clarity means that line item is actually part of the operating budget, not the personnel budget. But because in our department we have a mix of agency temps and temps that we hire through HR, I moved it up there for clarity for the board, because that's how, when we're budgeting and when we're watching how the expenses are going, we're including both of those line items together. So we moved it up there. Okay, so overtime I mentioned, and then the other one that is going quickly now is our 62010, which is the general office supplies. That's kind of an interesting name because that's also the line item for polling place supplies and other things, and we went from 13,000 to 35,000 in 1 month. So we are starting to move through. Advertising, almost everything is in place. We've already been able to pay for $9,800 worth of the advertising. We're trying to get everything paid as early as we can because of concerns at the end of the fiscal year. So that's my brief comments on that. I'd certainly be happy to try to answer any questions anybody might have in addition to that.
Thank you, Margie.
Thank you, Margie.
Okay. I have to pay this place.
It was not.
You found it?
It was not taken by one of our speakers.
Okay.
It was by the photocopier.
Oh, that's on me. I'm sorry.
All right. Let's see. Anything else on budget? Okay.
No.
Voter registration. Jessica? Janet? What are we talking?
I can give you numbers as well.
No, I have the numbers. I just didn't know.
Okay. So, in your packet, you should see the 2018 gubernatorial primaries summary. And what this is we're going to be providing you monthly, and it gives you how many active voters, inactive voters. When it was printed, there's 53 days to the close of voter registration. 55 days to the public test, that might be adjusted now, 62 days to early voting, and 74 days to election day. And then it also tells you, if you go further down here, how many individuals have signed up to be an election judge. So it says election judge summary, available 2612, passed the quiz 1500, and then we identify how many chief judges we need, how many judges have been trained, how many are scheduled for training, and total judges assigned. And then the Spanish judges are underneath. And then if you go on the far right-hand column, absentees requested, web means web delivery, mail means still U.S. Postal. So, and we'll be receiving that monthly.
Does this come by email or only the paper?
We can send it to you via email.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd like to get it by email if you can. I noticed on the bottom it's a smart sheet. I guess
doesn't want me to send
you've gotten into using the smart sheet. I know the people at the conference. Was it Dorchester County, somewhere on the Eastern Shore, were raving about this, and I don't know whether we had used it before. But
We've been using it for a while.
you have, yeah.
We've been using it more internally.
Yeah.
But we thought this was something that the board would appreciate.
That's very good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jessica, do you have any further? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
You've got 27-something signed up, available 26, passed quiz 15. Does that mean the other available people did not pass the quiz?
They haven't taken it.
That's what, thank you. I didn't know how hard it was.
Yeah, and the signed up is, they could have said, I'm signing up, but I'm only working the general.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then to State Board of Elections. First of all, there's a new board member. His name is Malcolm Funn, F-U-N-N. I could, from where I was sitting, I could not read what jurisdiction he came from.
He's from, I believe, St. Mary's County.
Okay.
And has been appointed to various boards and commissions and whatnot.
Whose place was he taking?
Pardon me?
Whose place was he taking?
Gloria Lala.
Yeah, what happened to her?
Senator Lala. I don't know. I didn't know that she wasn't there that long, less than a year, I think. Senator Lala.
Okay, then there was a security briefing in two parts, one in session, the other in closed session. Issues covered the new federal funding from the Omnibus Act. Maryland is getting $7 million. Additionally, the state also talked about they had a state security check of their ability to prevent fishing expeditions and whatnot, and so that was divulged at that time. I do not know what was covered in the executive session, obviously. The state board is pushing out cybersecurity information to the local boards. I met with the County Department of Technology Services to invite them. Because we're on the county system, I can't just invite anybody to go do a network review. So I went and sought the cooperation of the County Department of Technology Services and their security individual before I invited Homeland Security to come here and to begin the process of looking at the county network, our interaction with the county network and the State Board of Elections network to improve the security of the overall systems. So we have the promised cooperation of the county. They have assigned Keith Young, who is one of the top guys in the county with regards to security. There have been some preliminary agreements and membership information with MS ITAC. ITAC, and so that the county is apprised of what the state concerns are, and that dialogue and that information is being shared. We're also continuing to work with the Department of General Services with regards to different types of things that we can do at least between now and July 1st before the new fiscal year to improve security physically in the building. You know, like I talked about, the keys being changed out and things like that. Simple things. Absentee mailing by ES&S. Staff will be trained on the system and tracking of ballots on May 1st. The first data poll will be May 3rd, and then every Tuesday and Thursday, the state board will transmit files to ES&S, and then beginning June 5, mailings will occur daily. It'll be first-class mail. And then ES&S had an article in the New York Times, and it's my understanding there was also a congressional inquiry at the security hearings. Anyway, I sent this link to you so that you could read ES&S's response to Senator Shaheen and Klobuchar, and their response to that. I've received no opinion, nor the state, and it was mentioned at the board meeting, regarding election judges doing conceal and carry into the polling place. And then, of course, 418 Tilden Middle School was moved, and we did update the correction of Tilden Middle Center to Tilden Middle School for the record. And that's it. I'm going to pass over to the board attorney.
We have legislative update?
Oh, legislative. I'm sorry, Allison.
I put the election section of the General Assembly's 90-day report in your packet. So in the order in which they appear in that report, the headlines on each of these. House Bill 1278 was the post-election tabulation audit bill that passed. It does not change anything about our current pre-certification audits. Those continue the way we've been doing them. What is new is that for beginning with the general election, we will, after we certify, we will do a manual hand audit. We'll inspect ballots by hand and eye and compare them to the certified results. And so you'll be, well,
we have 120 days after the election to do that.
So we'll watch this space. We'll get regulations. I'm quite certain on how exactly we're going to conduct that after the general election. House Bill 1331 was the cybersecurity bill. It basically had two main features that affect us. There were some things in it like making sure that we have copies of paper backup of the poll book at the polling places, which of course we already have. Two things. One is that it had the language in it that we saw in several bills this session to require voters who want to get a web delivery ballot to provide more personal information. They need to provide their driver's license number, or military and overseas voters or disabled voters who don't have a driver's license can provide their social security number. We'll have to watch that space for regulations too. We don't keep social security numbers in MD voters, and so we're going to need guidance from the state on what we collect, how we collect it, on what basis do we reject an absentee ballot application because of insufficiencies in the data that we're given. There's questions that we'll just need to get regulations from the state on how we handle that. But the way that came out is that the voters who want a web delivery ballot need to provide more information on their application, regardless of what form they're using to.
And that'll take effect for the primary?
I did not write the effective date down here. I think,
as I understand it, July 1st is the effective date, and the question that was posed to the Deputy Attorney General that was sitting in that room at the time was we're going to have to get further clarification to manage all of these individuals who applied for absentee without providing that information.
If it takes effect July 1st, then it doesn't apply to the primary?
I don't believe it does apply. for
Right. I mean,
primary.
I would think
These
that,
individuals
yeah.
apply for the primary.
Oh, they apply
and
and the general. Oh, I gotcha. I gotcha.
So
Okay.
that's where we need the AG's opinion.
Okay.
Which bill was this?
This was House Bill 1331,
Oh, that
which was the cybersecurity
The web
bill.
delivery was part of that? Okay.
Yeah, we folded into that. The other issue that we were following closely, we had a lot of back and forth with Keith Young, the Chief Information Security Officer with the county and with the county's lobbyist over this, was that it has some mandatory reporting provisions for any sort of violation of any known or suspected security policy violations, like having somebody walk off with a board employee's cell phone, or thinking that somebody might have walked off with a board employee's cell phone. And that was exactly the crux of the issue. We're accustomed to thinking of the voting system as something that is locked down and separate from everything else electronic, and we're supposed to have an air gap between that and never have it connected to the internet. Well, this has a new definition of an election system and all these reporting things that need to happen if there is a attempted breach of an election system, and it's defined much more broadly to include things like the cell phone that has my county email on it. And so that's another area where we'll watch this space to see where the dialogue goes. Senate Bill 1048, this was the automatic registration bill, the Secure and Accessible Registration Act. Basically changes our current electronic voter registration system at the MBA and the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange and several other agencies from opt-in to opt-out. So voters won't be given the option to register. They will need to decline if they don't want to register or update their registration. And it did write down the effective date of that one, which is July 1st, 2019 for state agencies. Local departments of social services have a little longer to get on board. They have to have their systems in place by December 1, 19.
How do they register with a party?
Same way they do now. They'll get the question that they get now about what they
I'm not
want to
sure
choose.
that it'll really change the MVA system, will it? Because they're asked now, do you want to register? If they say no, then they're opting out. If they say yes, they do it. They can't automatically be registered if they don't have the information, right?
It's all
It has to come from the individual.
Right.
Well, a person will be automatically registered, but not by party. So how do
So
they
what
get?
would they be registered as?
They will. They'll be getting the choice of the party to affiliate with.
Are they getting in the mail?
Yeah, I
They're
see
getting-
what you
just
mean.
like
They
get their own
automatically
voter
have their
registration.
name and address.
Yeah, how can you automatically pick a party?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, if
You've got to put all of these questions in front of the person at the point of service.
More nightmares for us with...
you are correct in the sense that when that type of question was asked at the state board, Mary Wagner, who's in charge of voter services, said to the board members that if the person did not choose a political party, they would be automatically not affiliated. But the thing is, just as Allison just said, the structure of the questions in the opt-out process is going to be critical.
Yeah. I think this is an issue we want to stay on top of to, because we get so many issues involved when we're dealing with the provisional ballots on the issue of registration.
Who gets to, what I want to know is who gets to okay that? Who writes it and who gets to okay it?
That would go, well, if it's the Department of, if it's a state board writing the regs, it would be the state board.
And the state board gets to okay it?
Oh, okay.
Well, there's a
Okay, whatever
process.
regulations they write.
There's a
Not this.
process. So the state would propose regulations, they would distribute them, you could comment on it.
Notice and comment rulemaking, right?
Yeah,
Just at the
exactly.
federal level.
Typical administrative rules process. We do know that the Mayo is looking for somebody to sit on administrative rules, and I have done it before. It's like watching paint dry out. It's horribly, but it's important. I agree.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
And I mean, Jessica's watching this intimately, and I mean, a lot of this is just, it's the evolution of, from motor voter on, from that point where we used to get the card where you had the voter's wet signature with their information, and that discussion was directly between us and the voter.
having more of this intermediary relationship with these other agencies that have more knowledge and context on that voter situation and their data and how recent it is, and there's just much more of a distancing and complexity to that. And so, keeping an eye on address changes and when did they happen with this agency versus when did they happen with this agency is an ongoing, it's something that it's a different relationship now than it was at one point.
But it is you are correct. It is critical that we have.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about especially, our past history's been with MVA, but when we've had to go back and get language changed in what they were asking the people to come through because it was confusing. So that actually came between us, I guess, and the state and MVA. Is that how it went, Margaret?
I think it took us like 9 months to a year, just
a bunch of letters going back and forth.
Yeah, no, it
You
was.
have a file that's like this high.
Yeah, I think this will have to be watched carefully.
Jessica's in charge now of that? Congratulations.
Terry right, though it is written very much in line with the current practice. They still have to, they get the option to select a party, they still have to sign electronic signature.
Right.
They still have to claim under perjury. Yes, it hasn't been defined by the state how that will be carried out. But the previous versions of this bill in previous legislative sessions have had everything from putting people in kind of quarantine for 45 days and doing a bunch of mailings to have them off. So I think even though this is similar to kind of how it's done now with some question changes, it's a less confusing system for the voter.
It's less expensive
It's
than
far less.
what it was
And
originally.
there was questions about it was close to registration deadline, and they got automatically registered, but then they were in this period of hold. You couldn't put them in the poll book, and then they wouldn't be able to vote anyway. So this is, I think it still gives everybody equal opportunity. They're not trying to predetermine who's eligible. They still have to sign and say they meet the requirements and get to pick that party if they choose to. Oregon had a similar implementation where they did kind of mailings, and they had 200,000 people who didn't select the parties. I think they try to be balanced.
We also, House Bill 1717 passed, which clarifies that the voter registration number is not personal information. It doesn't require the same protections as a social security number, driver's license, or a credit card. Another one of these evolving issues of what expectations are about what information we provide about voters. So another watch this space issue, but that was the bill that passed.
What does a voter number do besides tell you when they register?
I think the intent of the bill was to say that it doesn't really, it doesn't really do anything individual, that it does not require the same protections as Social Security.
And it was the amount of personal information that put together in 1 million. And so by that being protected, it's just not we use administratively, it's randomly assigned.
It's not something that really gives you, having that piece of information doesn't open a door to anything for you. You can have everybody's voter registration
Do
number.
they register when they register, they vote provisional or they go vote in the machine? How is the...
We use that number in tracking the information on what's happening with that voter, but other than our tracking purposes, it doesn't get you anything. If that answers your question. We can come back to it. The last thing I just wanted to mention is that I haven't gone through everything. I believe we now only have, I saw 2 questions we're going to have on the ballot in November. The first one is to give the General Assembly the power to provide for same-day registration on Election Day. That is a constitutional amendment that will appear on the ballot in November. And then I also saw that there is going to be a measure on the ballot in November about how casino revenues are spent. I have not, I'm not for sure that there are only 2, but those are the only 2 that I have so far been made aware of.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to recommend that we skip right now.
I think he's drafting a letter.
Yeah, he's drafting a letter.
Allison, did you send this to us electronically?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Under old business, security.
We talk about that in the executive session.
Okay. Then we've already dealt with
can we go to new business? Okay. So we've already dealt with 430. Sample ballot. First of all, these are the proofs of the ballot as they currently exist. We did send out to all the candidates their specific ticket, and I want to thank Eric, and we did get some feedback. And all of it was pretty good. So Eric, also, the state has now informed the local boards of election that there are specific types of information that needs to be on our sample ballots, and it includes obviously the name of the local board of elections, telephone number, website, also state board information, and then information related specifically to the election date and time, the voters assigned polling place, name and address, early voting days and time. We have to have the official mail logo, return service requested for purposes of list maintenance, and then certain types of information dealing with delays, the same day voter registration, instructions on how to vote on the system. Obviously for us, we have to have it in Spanish. Statement encouraging voters to bring their specimen ballot, and the accessibility issues as it relates to the voting system. And I'm going to let Eric, Eric has began the process of helping Allison in preparing the sample ballot, and so what I would like to say is that, again, there's 77 ballot styles that will have to be printed, and so I would like to encourage all of the board members to, I've encouraged Eric to give you guys a call individually, but I would also like for you that if you see something that you really feel needs to be changed or added or whatever, if you could contact him before May 1st, because we will be laying in different, the different ballot styles into this document. So
This is changes to the sample ballot? Or
changes to the sample ballot, right.
And I just want to thank Eric for taking the heavy lifting on this document off of my shoulders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you guys all have a copy of the voter guide and sample ballot there. That's the nonpartisan version. I'm passing out what will change in this is our pages 8 and 9. There are Democratic and Republican versions. Obviously, there are different versions of that as well for different central committee races and House races and things like that. So you guys will all have kind of the different versions of that, so you can take a look at that.
When is this going to go out, as you said?
This will go out at the beginning, the end of May, right?
Well, I mean, it kind of, the goal right now is to get it out earlier rather than later in the month of May, because obviously the sooner we get it into the hands of the unaffiliated voters, especially before the voter registration deadline, the better. But that, of course, all depends on how quickly we're able to lock it down, and then if we can get it locked down earlier, then having the printer accelerate his timetables. Right now, our plan with the printer is to get it into the printer's hands on the 15th.
Is there going to be any color?
I will let Eric speak to the content.
Oh, it's okay. The cover page will be color. The inside will be black and white. Now you guys have the first 12 pages, which is the English version. There will, of course, be a Spanish version as well, which will be pages 13 to 24. We will get that translation done once the language and graphics and everything for the English version is complete, just for time efficiency. So as Margaret said, if you guys can all send me your feedback, that would be great. I'm going to go ahead and send you all a PDF version of this, so you have that available to you as well. And then when you get that email, you'll have my phone number, my email, so that you can contact me directly, give me feedback I passed around the checklist that Margaret mentioned. So some of the phrases in here we don't have license to change necessarily. The state has certain phrases that they want in the guide. So you guys can see what those are. But otherwise, happy to hear your feedback and ideas of how we can improve it. Overall, one of the things we did is we tried to put a checklist in the beginning. We had talked to or gotten some information from sort of lead design officials on this about giving people sort of an actionable list, and that helps people sort of spring into action. So hopefully that's helpful to the voters. We also tried to use the guidelines from the Center for Civic Design when we built this. So you'll see more columnar layout for faster reading. You'll see some expanded graphics, since some people prefer to read every sentence and some people will just scan and look at the pictures. Hopefully either type of user gets all the information that they need when they use it. On pages 4 and 5, a couple new things to mention. There's an expanded map, which will hopefully make it a little easier for someone to find where their early voting center is, so they can locate where they are in the county and see what voting options they have, with the full list, of course, being on that page as well. And then one new item is on page 11 also, which is about election security. We know this is a hot topic. It's in the media a lot, and we thought it might be good to reassure the voters and give them some information on all the things that we do to prepare for Election Day. We just had a meeting a few days ago with a whole number of different agencies, and I think that that's something that the public doesn't necessarily see, but that there are a lot of different things that go towards public safety, towards election integrity, things that the state does at their level, partner organizations that we work with to ensure that that we have election integrity, and that they understand that that's a very important element to the election process for us. So those are a few of the new items that are in there. And
there's one item that the staff has been going round and round about, and I know that the board spent a lot of time discussing it, and that is, if you look at the early voting, pages 4 and 5, number 9, St. Catherine Labore Parish. Now, the board asked us to use the word church, and some of the informal feedback we have been receiving is that people believe that they're going to go into a church to vote instead of the clergy room, which is in the old school. So we thought if we moved away from the word church and used the word parish, that that might attempt to mitigate people going into the church. Now, we are going to hang a gigantic banner from the old school where the main entrance is. But before we go any further on this move to go from St. Catherine Labore's church, I would like the consent of the board to, or at least a discussion about moving to the word parish.
Well, actually, parish is the correct term to use, because that whole facility there is, the church, what had been the school, the pastor's house, etc. And generally speaking, we refer to parishes encompassing that. So,
Marianne, if I could ask you a question or add to that. For those of us who are not Roman Catholic, a parish to me means a whole community. I've heard people say, I moved to a new parish, meaning precinct, community, whatever that would mean.
Are they in Louisiana, or are they here?
They're here. They're my in-laws, and so
and they mean community.
To me means a whole community. I would like to consider dropping that word completely. St. Catherine Labore, you've got the address, you've got the room, and not have either church or parish, because parish means something entirely different than you're explaining.
Oh, I did not know that.
Absolutely.
I do know in Louisiana their counties are called parishes.
Church groupings. Like I said, half my family's Catholic.
Yeah.
And when they move, they all got to sign up in the new parish. I'm in a new parish.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Margaret, was your point that some people thought they were going to vote in the church and they were kind of disturbed by that, I guess? Is that what that was some feedback you all received?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out a way to address this issue, because we can't really say the school because it's not really a school anymore.
Can you say in parentheses former school?
Completely.
Actually,
I think your solution's a good one. Just call it St. Catherine Labore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then underneath it spells out the Claridge Room.
It is the old school, and it's going to be a school again.
If you can call it the old school, that does help for the people who don't want to or can't, for religious reasons, vote in a church. And it's not a church. So the Claridge Room doesn't really tell you that unless you're already familiar with the facility.
We can certainly put that in.
Well, the old school doesn't tell you that unless you're familiar with the facility either, and this is an early voting site for the entire county.
You did say you were going to have a big sign saying Claridge Room.
Yeah, there'll be, just as the other locations we have, I forget how large the signs are, but we name them from the building.
I just suggest put some Catherine Labore. That's it. The address is there. People
Is that
live
an
around
agreement from the whole board,
fine.
just to use the phrase St. Catherine Labore, and then just the Claridge Room?
I'll make a motion to that regard, that we on the first line have St. Catherine Labore, second line the Claridge Room, and then the full address following.
I second that.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
I think we had a second from
Yeah,
Jackie.
Jackie.
Okay, whoever wants a second, I
Well,
don't care.
I heard Mary Ann's reaction. Are others opposed to saying in something in parentheses about it being the old school?
Well, I think we should just say school. I mean, it's going to become the home to the Avalon School in July anyway. So.
Well, was the
But
Claridge
it's
Room
not now.
I would move to amend the motion to add the word school.
the Claridge Schoolroom?
St. Catherine Labore School?
No, St. Catherine Labore. Yes, St. Catherine Labore School.
It doesn't exist currently. I don't accept that as an amendment to my motion.
It's not up
Was
to
the Claridge
it's a vote
Room?
of the board.
Was the Claridge Room at the school? I don't know.
Well, yes, it's connected to the school. It was for performances.
Oh, I
and
see.
things, so-
I don't think we should
Make a
put
motion
it.
has no additional rights.
I don't think we should put the school. Just leave it simple. St. Catherine Labore. That's it. Why
Okay.
making it too
There's
difficult?
a
So we have
motion
a
on the
second,
table.
yeah.
Do we have a second?
Which
Who's
motion?
second? You're
Well,
gonna, no, I'm sorry.
On the school.
David's motion. Is there a second to
Amended.
David's motion?
I'll second that motion.
So we voting on the first one or the second one?
You vote on the amendment
Vote
first.
on the amendment
Then you
first.
vote. Then you vote on.
And what would it say, the amendment
It
exactly?
would be to add the word school.
It
Where?
would be St. Catherine
Catherine
Labore
Labore
School.
In lieu of parish school or just school?
But
But
there
there's
is
no school.
There's no school there, was what Mary Ann saying.
First degree
Okay, get the
amendment
vote.
says St.
Get the
Catherine
vote.
Labore. The second degree amendment says St. Catherine Labore School.
I think technically the first one is a motion, the second one is a.
But Mary Ann says there's no school there.
Well, I know there technically isn't, but I don't think that's going to matter a whole lot because people will remember that there was a school there and the school building is still there. It hasn't disappeared, and it's part of the. I frankly don't think there's anything wrong with saying parish, to be honest with you, because it's going to be in the Claridge Room, which is not part of the church building itself.
We will need to do outreach to inform people that it's not in the church, because there are people who are religiously prohibited from going to the church.
It's interesting that this subject doesn't come up in the 20-some polling locations we have around the county. But this has been an issue with this one.
The reason why it doesn't come up in those places is because there's a specific state law that says that you can be reassigned to another polling place if you have a religious objection to going to a.
But this is
and you have 11 sites here,
right? And this is the closest location to a very significant Orthodox community in Camp Mill that votes in Wheaton on a regular basis, and to send the additional message that it's okay for them to vote at this facility, which we went to, I know I went to great lengths, and I know others were supportive, to make sure that they could vote in this facility, and the truth is that they can. So to me, this is a way to communicate that to people so that they know that they're not voting in the church itself. There will be other ways to get the word out, and I hope we will use all of them. But that would be...
If they live there, they know the area, so they know this place exists.
I would virtually guarantee that most people who live about a 10-minute drive from that location do not know which building is the church and which building is the school and which building is anything.
We cannot educate people. People knows this thing. We making it too difficult.
We can educate people, and
we're going to have a huge banner in front of the thing saying "Vote
and
here."
They're educated.
Right.
They can find out.
No, but the issue there is not whether they know where to vote when they get there. The issue is whether they are willing to go there in the first place.
How about after a Claridge room saying, in parentheses, old school?
I'm fine with that too.
What about the word you want?
The easiest thing to do is just
keep
the original
the
motion. Is just take off where those. If nobody's going to change their vote or not change their vote, whether we have parish or school or church,
I disagree.
Dropping it off is descriptive. You've got the room, you've got the address, you've got the community.
What's wrong with Alan's suggestion? Just having parentheses after room, old school.
Well,
that would work for me.
Let's first deal with David's motion. There's a motion on the table that has been seconded to change the name to St. Catherine Labore School. So we can vote on that motion with the absence of Kevin being in the room. I believe we can vote on that motion.
Would you prefer the suggestion that Alan made? Because I would withdraw the motion if you would agree with me.
Well, what are you suggesting then?
Alan's suggestion was to put old school after the Claridge room and just say St. Catherine Labore. In parentheses, it would say the Claridge room, parentheses, old school.
Are you okay with that?
No.
Yeah.
So much.
Well, no, so Alan would say St. Catherine Labore.
That's it. Old school, new school, forget about it.
We were just looking at that.
But
I think we're making way too much out of this.
Making too
I don't
much
think
out
this
of
is
it.
a concern for the Orthodox
I'm really
community.
sick of this issue when it angers me.
You're going to withdraw your motion?
No.
Okay, so
Okay, get the vote.
Okay.
Get the vote.
Okay, this is David's motion to say St. Catherine Labore School, and then the rest would be the same. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that's defeated.
Well,
You have to vote.
how
Ask
many
for
are
opposed.
opposed?
Oh, all those opposed?
Yeah,
Nay.
no.
No.
Okay,
to-
so then the original
No, I said no.
motion,
Okay.
the
No.
original motion is still on the table, which is to change it from St. Catherine Labore Parish to St. Catherine Labore.
David?
I'd like to move to amend the listing to say, after the Claridge room, parentheses, in the former school, close parentheses.
Is there a second?
Could staff shorten that to
Yeah.
former school?
Sure,
I think
former school.
works better, I think.
Okay, former school.
So you would have it St. Catherine Labore
The Claridge room, parentheses, former school.
and take out parish.
Parish is already out.
No,
No,
we
it's
haven't voted
not.
on that.
All we
No,
voted
no,
on
yeah.
was the amendment.
Correct.
So
was
this
defeated.
vote is to have it St. Catherine Labore, second line, the Claridge room, parenthesis, former school.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion? Motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second. Just.
Any discussion?
Vote on it and get
All those in
over it.
favor?
Aye.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Which
What
one?
who were the ayes?
Motion again?
I think that was Jim and David.
This is to put
Former
the
school.
school again?
So this would be St. Catherine Labore, and then it would say the Claridge room, parentheses, in the former school.
No,
No.
former
Former
school.
school.
Just former school.
Oh, just former school, I
That's the one you're
apologize.
voting, remember?
Yeah, that's what we're voting.
And so you voted and there was a
So,
yay.
Yeah. All those opposed?
Yeah, aye.
So that's
okay,
defeated.
Okay.
So, wait a minute, give us a second here.
Can we move the motion, please? My original
Read the
motion?
motion.
Again, that's
It
St.
is to just have St. Catherine Labore, second line, the Claridge room, and then the address following.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
I abstain.
Point of clarification, the motion was originally seconded by Jackie. Does that stay?
Yes.
I don't
Okay.
care. Go ahead.
And Alex
Just
and
gonna go
David
on.
abstained?
No,
No,
Alex
Alex
was
voted
no,
no.
and David abstained.
So it's carries
Move on.
3-1-1. So it carries.
There's another thing, and you don't need to give us feedback on this right now,
Thanks.
but in the context of the feedback that you give to Eric, the parking information for Lawton, the audio from the previous meeting reflects that the parking enforcement was lifted on Willow, Elm, and 44th Streets from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We had some discussion that we would revisit the way that is phrased here. So if you have preferences for how that is described, let Eric know.
And which one is that?
Number 8.
Jane Mott.
Alex, number 8.
And is
Number
that-
8, yeah.
Does that change based on whether it's the weekend or weekday? Or is that?
Are you talking about just changing the phraseology, or are you talking about changing the agreement that we have with the town council?
No, I'm not talking about changing the agreement. I'm talking about we've changed the language. It used to just say parking, free on site, limited overflow parking in residential area.
No,
I
this
think
is
is
much
what it
better.
said before. This
Yeah.
provides
This is good.
specific
Yeah, this is-
detail on where and when.
Right,
Yes,
right,
yes.
right. All I'm asking
Okay.
is whether it's accurate because it says from 10 to 6, and is that 7 days a week, or if
And
it,
I don't know.
because if it is available on Saturday and Sunday, we should just specify that.
Right. Margie, do you know?
None off the top of my head. I had no
Yeah.
idea this was going to be discussed. I'll be happy to go through my notes and confer with you on what
So
the
if that's the
agreement
case,
from
what would it
council
say?
says.
It would say overflow parking on Willow, Elm, and 44th Street from 10 to 6 p.m. For example, you could say Mondays.
Weekdays.
Weekdays, and on Saturday, Sunday, if it's available those days as well. I mean,
I'll check the agreement from the town council, and I'll send an email out to the board members as well as to Allison and Eric to just confirm what the actual agreement was, and then you all can weigh in on how you want it worded.
Okay.
What hours will the early voting centers be open?
10 to 8.
10 to 8.
This is nitpicking. Parking free needs to have to be on-site limited. Overflow parking, it looks like maybe on-site it's free.
Yeah.
It is free.
But it leaves ambiguousness about the overflow.
You mean limited free overflow? You don't say that?
Yeah, it is free.
Yeah, you're right.
Just say limited free overflow parking?
I just somehow think
No, you're right.
all parking
No, you're right.
is
It's all-
free.
Maybe a
Parking
semicolon
if it goes
after
at the
free.
end or something, it'll be more
Maybe a
clear.
semicolon instead of a colon, instead of a
yeah.
comma after the
Parking
free.
enforcement lifted on Willow, Elm, and 44th Streets from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Because after 6 p.m., you can park on those
Right.
streets anyway.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So maybe we don't need to specify the weekend because it's going to be free then. And it's going
If
to
you
be.
say it the way Allison just
Free
did
then
about lifting the enforcement, that says it very well.
Okay, okay, work something on that.
All right,
Wait, Alan?
Again, if
Alan?
you could get your comments to Eric, Eric's going to send you an electronic version, and if you could get comments so that we can, again, we have 77 ballot styles that have to be laid in, and it's his job to do that, and so we would like for you to pass that information on, okay?
Okay.
I like the
Wait,
idea
Alan?
about the free parking and telling people about the parking. I also like the idea about how long is the line, and I have a question, how does that work? How will staff inform voters about the line?
They've been doing that for a while.
Are judges? Huh?
They've been doing that for a while.
On the website.
Yeah, it's
Really?
it's live.
The-
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
The staff person who's at the early voting center is responsible periodically for, I guess, calling it in, or is that right?
We put it on the website, don't we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Use the smart sheet.
yeah. It gives
this
you,
is nothing
it's great
new
to
site.
know.
People
Yeah.
already know the site.
Trust me, when we had the lines last
Yeah.
time,
Oh,
it was
boy.
great to know.
Marion?
I just wanted to ask, and maybe it was said before, but am I right that this is the first time we've had 3 columns on the ballot? So that we were able to get it all on a single page, which is fabulous.
I know.
No, before we
Look at all
had,
the-
We always had 3?
we had three before.
I would have to, well, there's a
I-
whole bunch of ballots
no.
from 2016 in
I don't
my
know.
office.
But they got them all the
But
county council
and they're
candidates.
all on, and they're a size that we can read.
I know, I'm shocked.
That's fabulous.
They got all the county council candidates on them.
Um,
Thank God.
Yeah.
That's
Where's Kevin? Is Kevin around?
Yeah, I just saw
Just to
him.
give a quick report, and then we'll go into executive session.
Margaret. Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's running.
If it's about the ballot, you start that.
Is Beryl a
Is that the
councilwoman in Rockville?
She retired. She just recently,
They're all
she told me she
just
retired.
She retired off the council?
That's what I thought she
No,
said.
no, no. She retired from the county government.
Oh,
I believe she's still on the city council.
Oh, okay. Who? Cheryl Feinberg, the lady that
The lady.
testified.
Beryl Feinberg.
Beryl Feinberg, I mean.
She's on the city, Rockville City?
Yeah.
Right.
They got voting by mail now.
I would
Yeah.
say this checklist
Okay.
from the state is more of a guide than a mandate. We have been able to negotiate our way out of a few of the things that are on this checklist.
And we're still on the record.
Those for Lisa, for the record? Because the last two things that were passed out,
I
Lisa didn't get for the
Lisa, I
record.
gave you a copy of this. Did we give you a copy of that?
No, and whatever Eric passed out at the end, she didn't get a copy of either.
What did we negotiate, right?
God, Germany is running for can't get much besides Grace.
Oh, and nothing important. You know, like there's a specific early voting
Okay.
logo
Yes.
button that we managed to talk them into not making us do. And then there was one bit of phrasing in there, you know.
Margie, you're going to assign us to our different places and all that? Next meeting?
I'm not sure how that's going to work this year, Jim, but
At the next meeting, we've got to
somebody
divide
will
up who
handle
goes
that.
where.
I mean, it will be handled. I'm not sure what the process is going to be. We haven't really discussed that yet.
Where everybody
We
goes.
haven't given you our schedules yet for the canvas, have we? No, okay, just making sure. I didn't see. Okay.
I didn't hear the question.
Whether we've
On
given the
recess
schedules
for
yet for the
minute?
canvas.
Do we just want to, I mean,
Oh,
do
yeah.
you think he has anything to report?
The judicial watch case is still pending, and he's trying to finalize the letter, so
That's his
really all
report?
he has to say.
Okay.
The extent of his report.
Okay, we have the future meetings. Everybody sees the future meetings. Do I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Elections meeting?
I move you adjourn.
Second?
Second?
All those in
Are you
favor?
doing an executive session
Yes.
or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Closing
this meeting first.
Yeah.
It's not adjourning though.
Yes, we are adjourning this
We're
meeting.
adjourning the Board of
Oh,
Elections.
wait.
It's not technically adjourning.
Well, in this particular case, last month you could have done this. This month, because you have to take a motion on the minutes in open session, you're going to have to come back to the regular session.
To approve-
So,
to approve the
so
minutes.
for this month,
Okay.
you're going to want to just recess and go into
Reconvene.
Okay.
So we're going to recess?
I move we recess and reconvene.
Okay.
Right. But
After the executive committee
Right.
meeting.
So we're going to recess now. There's a second. We're going to go into
So
recess.
this is the recess, the
Yes.
motion for the recess,
Right.
and now a
Yes.
motion to go into
Right.
executive session.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
The
Yes.
executive session
Oh,
is to
great.
discuss security and
Wow, look at this.
executive session minutes, correct?
And there was one additional issue on committees.
Yeah, and that's in the...
I'm not
Personnel.
And
Personnel.
then
Yeah.
convened
Did
into
she do
executive
both of them?
session. No, she cannot.
Okay, so we'll apologize, but neither Lisa nor I captured the motion to go into executive session. We captured the motion to recess regular session. But was there a motion to go into executive
I
session?
move we go to executive
Second?
session.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.